Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Just a couple of items before we jump back into content. Here's a story from the Telegraph in London about dog nappings. They've got these organized gangs that are going around kidnapping dogs in England. It's up 17% in the previous 12 months. They've had 3,500 dogs that were stolen last year. Popular targets are working dogs such as Labradors, although other popular types such as Chihuahuas and Pugs. Criminally, people are stealing Chihuahuas? What is wrong with these people? Here is McDonald's. They've come up with a DNA deterrent spray. This is kind of an interesting thing. These are the McDonald's in Europe, and they're putting these little dispensers on the doors going out of the restaurant. So if somebody comes in and rips the place off, when they leave, they trigger this button and it sprays them with this DNA spray. They're putting this in 700 stores in Europe. And that DNA, you can't wash it off. It gets in your clothes. It'll stay there for 6 months. You can't get rid of it for 6 months. And the spray has a unique DNA signature that connects you to that store and to that crime. It's invisible, it's non-toxic, and they're putting it in all 780 stores, McDonald's stores in the UK. And then here's a story about a hospital in southwestern Pennsylvania. We're already starting to see now the impact of Obamacare. Premiums going through the roof, double digits in a lot of places. Here's a southwestern Pennsylvania hospital. They are going to stop delivering babies after March 31st because of Obamacare. Not entirely, but in large measure because of Obamacare. Because they are anticipating that the reimbursement rate under government-run health care is not going to be enough to pay their costs, the doctor's costs, the equipment cost, and all that to keep their doors open. So you live in southwestern Pennsylvania, anywhere near Windber, Pennsylvania, good luck having a baby. You're going to have it in an alley in your car, apparently, because of Obamacare. Now, this is Charlie Rangel, clip 8. Number to call, by the way, if you want to join the program, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Here's Charlie Rangel. Remember, we just heard from all these southern governors. Let me finish the end of that statement from Rick Perry, because this is great stuff. And again, there's no perfect candidate, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that Rick Perry walks on water, but man, do I love what I read here. I just love this. In fact, he says, last paragraph, the piling on by the political left and their cohorts in the media to use the massacre of little children to advance a pre-existing political agenda that would not have saved those children disgusts me personally. You know, and I read that piece from the New York Times. I read it yesterday, the New York Times, saying the stuff that President Obama is talking about would not have saved a single life in that elementary school. Not one. Background checks wouldn't have done it. Making the sale of guns illegal wouldn't have done it because he didn't buy one. He stole it. And he would have passed a background check. He had no trouble with the law. So all the stuff that Barack Obama's talking about wouldn't have done diddly to save those kids. And so Rick Perry says, this whole thing just disgusts me to stand on the graves of these children for a political agenda. The Second Amendment, he says, the Second Amendment to the Constitution is a basic right of free people and cannot be, nor will it be abridged by the executive power of this or any other president. Whew. I like the sound of it. Anyway, here is Charlie Rangel. You hear what's coming from Phil Bryant in Mississippi. Second Amendment, we're going to stand for it. We're not going to allow it to be abridged here. Governor Rick Perry in the South, we're not going to allow Second Amendment to be abridged here. Here's Charlie Rangel about southern states.
New York is a little different and more progressive in a lot of areas than some other states. And some of the southern areas have cultures that we have to overcome. But we do have a model set of what Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals have come together and put the party labels behind them and come forward with something that says, hey, we may disagree, but one thing is clear, that we have to do something, and that's exactly what they have done.
So Charlie Rangel said, look, you got these Southern cultures, and they believe in the Second Amendment. And I've just read you proof. Phil Bryant, Mississippi. Rick Perry, Texas. We believe in the Second Amendment. No president's going to set aside. And Charlie Rangel's exactly right. The southern areas have cultures that we have to overcome. We've got to overcome all of this allegiance to the Constitution, this allegiance to the Second Amendment, this belief that southern states have in the right of people to keep and bear arms. We've got to overcome that if we are going to take the guns out of their cold, dead hands. Now, not everybody was impressed by President Obama's speech yesterday. Here's Chuck Todd, clip number 9, NBC. And remember that NBC was the one who was bloviating about this marvelous theory about the origin of life. Another theory, deep sea vents and invented motors for this ancient bacteria. And all this is just blather. It's just gas. But that's NBC. Here's NBC's Chuck Todd talking about Obama's speech yesterday.
Well, look, this wasn't a simple policy rollout. This was the launch of a very emotional campaign. This was an emotional president, and he was using any possible tool he could have in order to try to launch a campaign because they know the reality of the big three proposals he put out there. They have to somehow get through Congress, and we know all of them are going to be difficult. The assault weapons ban may be the most difficult and a bridge too far, but even to improve the background check system, the magazine clip, what struck me is they realized they almost have to tap into emotion, tap into frustration, to anger in the public, and use that because he spent more time, I think, making an emotional case for his proposals than he did talking about the individual proposals themselves.
So he says, look, this was all emotion. This was all emotion. It was all appearance. It was all froth. There was no substance here. He didn't talk at all about the substantive nature of his proposals. So Chuck Todd, unimpressed. Now, Stephanie Cutter, back to clip number 3, Rob. Stephanie Cutter, remember, she was the spokesman for President Obama during the campaign. And she says, basically, we're still in campaign mode. Let's listen.
President Obama provides the leadership here, and he said the American people have to speak out and make their voices heard in this debate, just like the NRA is doing with their membership. And President Obama's network across this country, grassroots individuals who organized, volunteered their time to get the president reelected, are much more powerful than the NRA lobby. And I think that you can expect to see that network activated very soon, and for good reason. We need to pass common sense legislation to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and those who shouldn't be carrying guns. And that's the common sense nature of this. It's not about infringing upon the Second Amendment. It's about making sure that only gun owners are responsible gun owners, and we're not giving guns to criminals.
Now, so Stephanie Cutter saying, look, this is a campaign. This is just like running for president. We're going to activate the grassroots networks just like we did to get elected. So for President Obama, the campaign never, ever stops. Now, the Morning Joe panel, clip 4, they are just as unhappy with the NRA as, remember the NRA came out with this ad. Look, why should your kids have less protection than the kids of the president? His kids go to a school with armed guards. The NRA wasn't talking about Secret Service detail. He was talking about the kids where President Obama's kids go to school, the school where his kids go. And they've got armed guards. They've got 11 or 12 armed guards to protect their students, because they are precious to them. Their lives are precious. They're going to make sure they're protected. And so the NRA's point is, why aren't your kids as special and as valuable as President Obama's kids? And they are. Your kids are as precious and important. The value, the sanctity of President Obama's kids, the sanctity of their life is no greater than the sanctity of your kids. So if their kids deserve maximum protection, your kids do also. But Morning Joe did not care for that one bit. Let's listen.
That's a real ad.
Yeah. That, my friends, is political pornography.
That's one of the grossest things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Joe,
what's wrong? What's wrong with these people, Mika? What's wrong with these people? You have children that had no say in the decision on whether their father was going to step forward to be president of the United States, to run for president, one of the most bone-crushing, sacrificing things any husband or wife can do to their family. And the second they make that decision, their children and their entire family have targets on their backs. And the NRA is putting something out like, what's wrong with these people? Putting out apps that 4-year-olds can play on the anniversary of the Newtown murders, and now putting out an ad talking about the president's daughters?
They are out of step, out of the mainstream, totally out of sync with what's going on in our society. And quite frankly, after seeing that, I think some of the people who run that thing are sick. I really do. I think they are sick in the head.
So there's Mika Brzezinski. That's the clip we played earlier. She believes they're sick in the head. So the Morning Joe crowd can't bloviate enough against the NRA for the disgusting personal nature, this political pornography. But remember, these people were completely silent when Obama was out there saying that Romney is a felon. I mean, Stephanie Cutter said that. Stephanie Cutter, the one we heard earlier, she said Romney's a felon. He killed somebody's wife with cancer. Paul Ryan pushes grannies off the cliff in a wheelchair, but that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But this, where the NRA is saying, hey, your kids deserve as much protection as the president's, that is political pornography. Let's grab one quick call. Let's go to Larry in Belton, Texas. If we can bring Larry in. Larry, you're on Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, how are you, sir?
Good. Good. What's up?
Hey, I got an idea. If Congress is thinking of considering doing something about gun control, why don't the Republicans in the House put forth their measure for gun control by, okay, we'll vote for something if you throw the video games and the movies in on it. Like, 1 for 1.
So kind of dangle that carrot in front of them. We'll let you ban guns as long as you let us ban these violent video games.
Exactly. Don't give them what they want unless we get the video games was not mentioned.
Well, that'd call their bluff, certainly, because they don't want to do anything about violent video games. They might want to talk about it, but they sure do not want to do anything about it. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate the call. You know, I got a call from a newspaper in Texas this morning. I wanted to do an interview about these lyrics and modern contemporary songs that have these pretty disgusting lyrics in them. And I said, well, it's easy. Have the FCC appoint a panel of parents of 13-year-olds and let them decide what teenagers ought to be allowed to hear on the radio. Focal Point, AFR Talk.